Hi. Today I want to tell you about a very interesting experience. I just came from a prospective client, very likely to become a client, who was given, unfortunately, some bad advice, and that bad advice set them back a bit further than they expected to be at this point in time. Well, by complete coincidence, that person who gave them the bad advice can't be there to follow through on the work that they had set out. And I guess that got lucky because had they tried to follow through on that work, they would have been totally left in the dark and gotten to a point in time where there was almost no turning back and would have found out the hard way that they'd gotten some bad advice. Well, that all is water under the bridge because through an acquaintance they were introduced to me. I set them straight on the right path, and it looks like things are going to work out for them. And it turns out that they're going to work out maybe sooner than they thought. So despite being set back a little bit, it all works out in the end. The interesting thing about that, and I'd like to contrast this with another experience, which is really the point of my entry, is that I spent more than 2.5 hours with the CEO of this 13-year-old company. Well, that's not insignificant. Being around in business for 13 years this day and age is pretty good for a small company that's growing in a very challenging economy and challenging market. And the CEO was really personally interested in getting the performance of the organization to where they needed it to be. Very personally interested, totally understood what needed to be done, totally understood the stakes that were at hand, and was very involved in all the decisions and very involved in supporting the work that needed to be done and clearly laying out why things were going to go the way they were going to go and how that was important to the organization's future. I want to contrast this with another experience with a company who I'm going to refer to as a real class act. They didn't have the culture, they didn't have the attitude, they didn't have the wherewithal to even be upfront about what they really wanted. I could barely get 2 minutes, let alone 2.5 hours, with the person that ran that other company. And it's really sad because everybody else in the organization had a great opportunity to make some amazing changes in performance. But turns out the leadership and other folks were just not there. They just really weren't willing to step up, to become what they needed to be to get the kind of performance improvements that they said they wanted. And that's the actual point of this entry, is to talk about the warning signs. All the warning signs that this company didn't have what it takes were there from the very first time I spoke with them. And I knew it. And stupid me, I ignored the warning signs. Message, it goes out to all the coaches and fellow consultants, as well as the practitioners, the staff, the leadership, the management of companies that really want to see a change, or that you want to see the change from the inside. Those warning signs are what we all know to be warning signs. The disaffected leadership, the unenchanted managers, the people that 40-hour work weeks are a joke, the putting overtime, hiding overtime under the rug, not paying attention to the staff that have answers and saying, this is what works, this is what doesn't work, but instead forcing ways of doing work that really didn't make any sense. Those and many more. Motivation 1.0 instead of motivation 3.0. I'll make a reference to that in the text below. Those kind of things there are obvious issues, and people instead of dealing with those issues are ignoring the issues. All the warning signs, everything that would tell you this is going to be doomed, from schedule pressure on hassling over cost and time, you name it. Those are all warning signs that, because they wanted to become a more efficient organization, or at least they claimed, I was happy to help. Turns out they really didn't. They wanted to do all the things. They didn't want to do all the work. They wanted to have all the things that a lean and efficient organization has, but they didn't want to do all those things that it would take to become a lean and efficient organization, because that would mean that they'd have to be a different kind of company, and they just weren't interested. The warning signs were there, and I ignored them. I failed, my fault, for believing that they wanted to be a kind of organization, and that the goals that they failed to set would be forthcoming, and that we can actually articulate those goals. The company I just came from, as you see I'm in my car, had very clear goals on what they had to improve. That was easy. The other company, the Class Act, didn't even have the courage to admit that their goals were non-existent. After pressing and pressing and pressing, the goals never showed up, as no surprise. The real work they needed to do would never show up either. And all my pressing did was make that painfully clear. Those goals weren't coming and they weren't gonna. Sorry I couldn't help them. If you think this is you, sorry I couldn't help you. But everyone else, don't ignore the warning signs. You know what they are. Better to pay attention to those warning signs early instead of waste your time with the headaches that come when you ignore them. So with that, I wish you all good luck. Be lean, be agile, be smart, but listen to the warning signs. And you don't need 20 years experience to know what they are. Bye for now.